after taking all of the Frank Kern courses on learning direct response marketing, and then taking Dan Kennedy's courses, and then downloading Funnel Hacking Live and reading .com secrets and all this, I never really figured it out, man. I was at a place where my fulfillment was just like garbage. And then number two, I didn't have a consistent lead source. When I came to work with you guys, I was able to build a system around my fulfillment where not only did I sell them on the call, but I started to set expectations on that sales call, even more expectations on my onboarding call. By the end of day 7, we got testimonials. By the end of day 30, they got 5 or 6 podcast booked. By the end of day 90, they were in front of 2 to 3 million people. So it was just like a well-oiled machine. And dude, once that happened, it was like a rocket ship. It was like, now I had the confidence where I could just get on those calls and be like, I know my stuff is the best.
Deven, first of all, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Man, it is a plum-pleasing pleasure. I was looking forward to it all week. So thanks for having me on, brother.
Let's go, man. So what I like to do on these episodes, first things first is, tell people what you offer, what's like, who can you specifically help overall?
Yeah. So over the course of the last 14 months, we've been having this business, podcastguest.io, and primarily we've been helping a lot of people in the info marketing space who really struggle with one problem. They don't have the exposure that they know that they need. So they look at other people that are in their industry and they're like, dude, I'm way better than him. But the only problem is that they're more well-known. So what we do to solve that problem is we get them booked on the top podcasts in their industry so that they can get in front of millions of people without having to spend crazy money on ads or, social media is great. But in my opinion, long form, genuine, authentic conversations is the number one way to get in front of your people and to get them to trust you. So that's what we do.
Love it, man. Yeah, I think it's a huge, because like back to your point of like organic, like I'm the organic guy. It's what I do, for closers. And, it's one of those things where organic is good, but if you could literally just like tap into somebody that's already built an audience over the last 5 to 10 years, like it's just a massive cheat code to be able to get it. And, the leads a lot of times, because they've already built that trust with that person, it makes it a million times better than, running some ads. So anyway, we'll get really nerdy on that here in a bit, but I do want to take a couple steps back and just, cause your story, you've tried different offers. You actually just got out of the Army. So I just take us back as far as you want to go. When did you start the first business? What was that all like?
Yeah. So I'll just do like the abbreviated version because it's long. So I graduated college 2020, became an officer in the Army. And I always knew that I wanted to do some type of entrepreneurship. Like I didn't know what it was, but my girlfriend reminded me recently. She was like, you remember when you used to sell like broken iPhones back in high school? I was like, oh yeah. Like I was that guy, I was just, it wasn't in my family, but regardless. So with that being said, I started off as the 20-year-old life coach. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to be the life coach at 20 years old. I don't know. I was just reading all
tons of experience,
tons of experience in life. So that obviously did not work out very well. But then I ended up getting mentored and coached personally by a guy by the name of Les Brown, who's a very popular motivational speaker and influencer over the past, I would say, few decades. And I got approached one day by a woman named Heidi, and she said, Deven, you ever thought about teaching people this? I was like, teaching people what? She said, teaching people how to share their story. I said, Heidi, I don't do that. I'm just the one that speaks. I went to go check my bank account. I had -$7. And I started to think, I said, maybe Heidi's up to something here. So I went back to Heidi and I said, Heidi, were you serious about that? She said, yes. So I started a company and it was called Storypreneur. And what I was doing is I was teaching entrepreneurs how to craft their story so that they can engage their audience and ultimately sell more of their products and services. But the biggest problem, Aaron, that my clients had was that I would teach them how to tell such a compelling message. And then they would get done with my program and they would never share the story. So I was driving one day home and I was listening to a podcast. Now I've had my own podcast for about 7 years. It's called 7-Figure Mentor. And I was listening to a podcast by the guy with a guy by the name of James Clear of Atomic Habits. He's the guy that wrote the book. And the podcast host asked him something that changed my life. He said, James, what is something that you say no to all of the time? And James said, well, something I say no to all the time are public speaking engagements. He says, in fact, that's why I charge $200,000 a year so that so few people could say yes. And the hosts were like, why would you say no to that type of money? And he said, it's simple. He says, because when I do the work dies. He said, in other words, when I speak, nobody outside of those walls will ever hear my message. He says, the question we need to begin to ask ourselves is, what is the work that when we do it just one time will continue to work for us forever? And this is what changed my life. He said, you see what we're doing on this podcast right now? The host said, yeah. He said, in 10 years from now, somebody could buy my book. Someone could become a private consulting client. He said, in other words, when I do this work, it multiplies itself. And it was like a light bulb went off. I was like, oh my God, what if I not only showed people how to craft the message, but also help them get booked on the top podcast? So now that they could actually share that story. So fast forward a few months, I still, you know how it is being an entrepreneur. Sometimes you get that little voice in the back of your head that's like, no, you can't do that. You're not qualified, this, that, and the third. I went to Funnel Hacking Live last year, 2023. And Russell Brunson said something that changed my life. He said, what God does is he looks at you and he says, okay, I've given you this idea. For me, it was get people booked on podcasts. And what God does is he sits there and he looks and he says, is Deven going to be a good steward of this idea? Is he going to take action? Is he going to pursue it? Is he going to go after it? Or is he going to allow the devil to dissuade him from this? And if you listen and you're a good steward of your idea, eventually he'll give you a better idea that'll bring you closer towards your ultimate goal. And I started to think about it and like this voice just came in my head, like the podcasting. Came home from that event. I was pissed off because at that event, I didn't even have enough money to valet my C8 Corvette that I had absolutely no freaking, I did not deserve to have that car at that time. I had to call the bank up 2 months to delay payment when I first got it because I couldn't afford it. But I was like, frick it, I'm getting a nice car. So anyways, I was dead broke when I got home from that. But I had this fire and I said, what am I going to do? I want to take action on this. I went to a guy named Tanner Chittister, big online coach in the space. And what I did was I didn't say, Tanner, I'm going to get you on podcasts. What I did was I went out, I found podcast hosts that were very well known. I just sent them a DM. Hey, you want Tanner on the show? Tanner had no idea I was doing this. Once I secured a couple of them, I went back to Tanner and I said, hey, I got some podcasts for you. You want to go on? He says, yeah, but I'm not paying you. Right. This is kind of this is like a little bit premature to when podcast was like mainstream, like where everybody's doing it. So not too many people were really jumping on the wave yet. So anyways, he said, okay, cool. I want to do it. And people saw what I was doing for him, but nobody else knew that I was working with him for free. And within that first month, people saw what I was doing and I got a bunch of clients. I think I made $60K that first month after helping him for free. And that's where we started. And ultimately, that's how we got to where we are now. Obviously, a lot of ups and downs along the way, you know, learning how to dial in fulfillment, hiring, selling better, et cetera. But that's how we got to where we are right now.
Nice, man. And one of the things that jump out is, you know, I think there's this, you've probably seen it a lot too, especially with a lot of these younger entrepreneurs coming into the space. I think there's a big like entitlement thing when it's like, oh, like you need to pay me before I do anything for you, right? Like it's a mindset. I'm not saying it's a wrong mindset, but you kind of like took that first step of like, okay, this isn't something that I have super dialed in yet. Let me like do the front load the work and then just be able to like kind of give it off to, you know, in this case, Tanner. And, you know, obviously he said yes. And, you know, maybe, who knows, you still would have probably gotten here in a little bit of a different way, but you know, that's the path that ended up working for you there. So I think that's a huge takeaway for me. It's like, hey, if you're starting a new offer or starting something, it's just like, do it first and then start to ask for money afterwards, you know?
Aaron, there's a quote. There's a quote I want to leave everybody with. It says that never miss an opportunity because a paycheck isn't attached to it. And for me, that was it. That was like there was no paycheck, but I saw a massive opportunity. So you're spot on with that.
Mm-hmm. So what happened next after that? So you start, like you said, you started dialing in fulfillment, dialing in sales. You know, you were getting a lot of referrals from, you know, people saw that you were doing for Tanner. So what's kind of the next, like what happens next there?
Yeah. You know, the next couple of months we continued to grow. It was like double, then we doubled again. And then like things got really slow because like the referrals dried up. Like a lot of it was coming through organic social where I would post on Facebook that I was like traveling with Tanner. And then like 5 people would comment and be like, bro, I want to do this too. But then it just kind of dried up, man. It was like the desert. So we were getting a couple of clients here and there, but there was some massive dips. And I knew that I needed to figure out how to get leads. But the problem was I didn't know how to get leads. I was the guy that was reading all of the books. I was watching all of the courses, going to all of the conferences, and I would hear things like people saying, you got to run ads. Whoever could acquire the most to spend a customer is going to, or whoever can spend the most to acquire a customer is going to win. And I would be like, yeah, like paid ads is for those guys that like the Tanners or the Coles or the whoever. They're not for like me. So I didn't run ads. Honestly, I was scared out of my mind to run ads because I thought it was so complicated. And ultimately, my next step from there, truthfully, was reaching out to you guys. And that's kind of where things started to become finally consistent. And I finally got those lead sources that I needed.
Nice. So I guess just so we can put context into those numbers, because we talked about like, you started somewhere and then you doubled and then,
Yeah.
there was nothing. What were like those numbers in between? And then where were you when you decided to jump in with us?
Yeah. So it was 60K in revenue. And then we did over 100K in revenue. And then that next month, it more than cut in half, if not 3/4. I don't remember off the top of my head. But the reason why I knew I needed to get help was because I'll be honest, I never really figured out the leads thing. Like when I was doing my previous offer, I was just relying on Clubhouse. I was just like, go speak on Clubhouse. And then Clubhouse died. I was like, well, now I'm out of luck.
RIP.
So
That was Clubhouse was fun when it was
it
around.
was a lot of fun, but I just never really understood after taking all of the Frank Kern courses on learning direct response marketing, and then taking Dan Kennedy's courses, and then downloading Funnel Hacking Live and reading .com secrets and all this. I never really figured it out, man. And I was sick and tired of the yo-yo, like the constant up and down. That wasn't due to necessarily that I wasn't trying, but due to the fact that I just didn't have methods that were, number one, proven, and number two, reliable. So that's where I kind of was, man. It was like, yeah, I made some money, but then it was like it went away. And then the other problem was the fulfillment started to break because I had no clue. I never had a done for you offer. I was like, well, I guess I was under the impression, let me just see if anybody wants to buy this. Well, in like 2 months, there was like 15 people that I now needed to get all of them on podcasts. I went out, hired some some teams from the Philippines. They helped me out. But then I remember I had one person say something negative about my product, which I've come to learn, like not every, that's just part of the game. Like someone's going to say something negative, but I took it super personally. And then I remember I was in closers at this time and I was working with John, and he just like helped me create this plan to dial in my fulfillment. And the reason why I bring that up is this: I lost all confidence in my offer and I stopped selling my program. So when I came to you guys, I was at a place where my fulfillment was just like garbage. I felt, although it was only one client that was complaining out of 15. And then number two, I didn't have a consistent lead source. And that was a really big problem for me.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I did a poll on Cole's story the other day, which I'm like pulling back the curtain. Guess what? I'm the guy that posts on Cole's story. And I did a poll and asking like, what is, just curious, what is the biggest thing that you're struggling with right now? And I put like lead generation, building a sales team, what was the other thing? Just like overall scaling. And I was expecting it would be, the two other options, but like 85% was lead generation and marketing. And I think that was like my assumption is just because I do marketing every day and I assume that people just understand how to generate leads. But back to your point, it's like, it's not, it's simple, right? But like, if you don't have the right methods in place and know where to focus, it starts to become this like shiny object of like, this person said, this is the best way and this is the best way. And then it's like, you never really, focus down
Right.
on one thing. So you mentioned in terms of the fulfillment stuff, just so we can give some actionable, steps. What were, you started to lose a little bit of confidence in the offer itself. What were some like tactical things that you did and that, that John helped you with to get you over that mindset?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, listen, onboarding. That was the first thing, the most important thing. I had like no onboarding experience whatsoever. So really what you guys helped me out with was crafting that onboarding experience, how to set proper expectations, especially for a done for you offer, and how to confirm the buying decision ultimately. Like how do we keep that excitement at a peak within the first 48 hours? So we created a plan of exactly how to do that. Like, so for me, I created slides that literally laid out all of the FAQs that I get from when is my podcast going to come out? Do I have to pay for the podcast on top of the fee that I pay you? What if I don't like a podcast? Just like from the moment they join, here is exactly what is going to happen from here to day 7. And that was so important because now my clients at the end of 7 days were like, can I give you a testimonial? So it was just so impactful for us, specifically the onboarding, setting those proper expectations, and then also realigning expectations along the road. How do we handle client conflict? How do we handle those challenges when they come up? So it was just revolutionary. And then not only that, but then I started coming to closers and John and my coaches and everybody. I was like, hey, I have my CSM. Can you also help her out? And they're like, yeah, like, come on, bring her in. Let's go. So it was like I was able to build a system around my fulfillment where not only did I sell them on the call, but I started to set expectations on that sales call, reinforced and set even more expectations on my onboarding call. By the end of day 7, we got testimonials. By the end of day 30, they got 5 or 6 podcasts booked. By the end of day 90, they were in front of 2 to 3 million people. So it was just like a well-oiled machine. And dude, once that happened, it was like a rocket ship. It was like, now I had the confidence where I could just get on those calls and be like, I know my stuff is the best. And that's why I'm sure we would talk about it. But I went from selling when I first started like $7,500 and I was closing at like 35 or 40%. And then now the offer is, I'll just tell you guys, like 20K plus 35 to 40% close rate. Right. So it's like it's just crazy what has happened over that amount of time.
Yeah, I think it's a huge misconception for a lot of people. Like they, within their program, we talk about like raising prices, and it's like if you're hovering, it's dependent on your close rate and cash percentage. If it's sitting at a certain spot, it gives you kind of like that green light in your head to raise prices, right? X amount. But you went, I mean, pretty substantial. Be like, okay, 7,500 up to 20K. I mean, that was, that's obviously a pretty big jump. Was there anything specific other than like having that confidence that John kind of walked you through
Oh man, I tell you what,
to sell that?
Hell yeah. I'll tell you what specifically. It was, first off, I showed up Monday through Friday to every single sales training that there was, there was at least one a day, right? Not including the setter training, the closer training, ads training. I went to every single sales training. What did I do? I brought my calls. I got them reviewed by, you know, by Jeff, by Igor when he would go on the calls and pop in randomly, and and John and Tony and all of them, all of the coaches. And every single call I would get better. So with that being said, John helped me put together my script. John helped me learn how to ask deeper questions. John taught me how to extract pain from people and how to link my solution to their pain, and how my solution is the vehicle that will help them overcome that pain and ultimately get to their goal. So, man, this was, and I'm not saying this for those of you that are listening, like, oh, you're on his podcast, of course you're going to say this. Before working with you guys, I invested like at least 100 plus K in different mentorships. Don't get me wrong, some of it was really good, but from a sales perspective, man, like this literally changed my life. And now guess what? Now I'm bringing on closers. Now I'm teaching them what you guys taught me. And it's just like this effect that I genuinely feel has changed the trajectory of my life, because now I have this skill that I can transfer onto other people as well. So yeah, it was definitely the sales call recordings, trainings. But then I remember the first day I joined, I logged into the online portal and I was like, holy. And this was before I joined Boardroom. This is regular STA. There was literally the solution to everything that I desired. Give you one example. Cold email up until this point has been my number one lead acquisition source. We've made like over probably $750,000 in the last 9 months from cold email. You know where I got that training from? The portal.
Mm-hmm. There you go. So we're touching on the numbers there. I think everyone's always wondering, like, okay, cool, you came in and like where were you? So what's I guess your best month since joining us?
Well, if we want to talk collected, because the most I ever done before that was like 100-ish revenue, but I only collected maybe like, I think like 40, 50, somewhere around there. Yeah. When I came to work with you guys, my highest cash collected up until this point, And by the way, when you see this in like 2 months, it's going to be a drastically different answer. But it was like 105K collected. The revenue though was 132. So I
Yeah.
collected, my upfront cash collection percentage was like 75% on a 20K offer. So we could, that for any business owner that's listening, you know that that is like really good. So now,
Cash is king, baby.
exactly. Now we just started running these ads. We're booking a lot of calls a day. So, now things are really getting exciting. I finally overcame the limiting beliefs that I had around paid ads. I'm going to be honest with everyone that's listening. For a year, I did not run ads because I thought it was this technical behemoth. And I finally decided to run ads, and I could not be more happy. So here we go.
Yeah, it's a huge bottleneck for people because I think what happens is, because you probably just did you try it in the past, like ads in the past?
Yes, I did, and my account got banned. And I was like,
Yeah, so
screw this.
that's usually what happens. It's like it's just a negative experience that someone has, and especially if you just try to do it, everything yourself, and you don't have a ton of training, and you're doing it off of like a YouTube video or whatever it is. Like a lot of that stuff could be outdated, and there's a lot of things in between. So what was the solution to that then? Like, what gave you the confidence? What changed it for you to be like, okay, let's like turn these ads on and try it again?
I have a mindset coach, and one of the things that we worked through, I think for a long time, I said that I wanted to grow, but I think I was actually afraid to grow because in my mind I was thinking, yeah, I want to grow. Like, that's a nice thing to say online and stuff like that. I want to grow, I want to grow. But then I would start to think about what would the realities be if I did grow. I would have to get more team. I would have to invest more money. And subconsciously, I was just like, honestly, I think I was just afraid of growth without consciously realizing it. So I started to work through that. And I got to this point where I was like, yeah, I'm booking these calls from cold email. But then I started to like, sometimes we forget who we are. And I was like, man, you're living way below your potential. And I was like, yeah, I could post content online and I can do these things, but I already experienced the power of cold outreach with email. And what was happening when I would go out to people unsolicited who had no clue who I was, get them on a phone call, and in 60 minutes, they handed me their credit card for $20,000. So at my mind, I was like, well, what if I had them come to me with paid ads? Like immediately, that's more leverage. Immediately. So I was like, man, Deven, step number one, I'm going to be honest, Aaron, I had to stop judging myself because I learned that I judge myself so much and I would say such messed up things to myself that stopped me from taking action. Those were things that I thought inspired me to take action. Like Deven, like stop being such a this or stop acting like a that. But those things really stopped me. So once I started to work through those with my mindset coach, but also with John and closers as well, like we would get on these calls. I remember back in April when I was struggling with a lot of this. He was like, dude, take your family on a trip. And I took my family, my dad, my cousin, her, I think it was one of my best friends, went on a great trip. So it's like I had those mentors in my life that enabled me to overcome myself. And once I was able to do that, of course, now I'm like, I wish I would have started this 12 months ago, but I wasn't at the place. I wasn't ready yet. So now I'm finally ready where it's like, okay, I know that I'm ready for that growth. And that's part of the game. Like that is the fun part, is figuring it out as you go. And I one thing we would always say in the army, Aaron, is like if no one's gonna die, like it's not that big of a deal. So it's like, what happens? I gotta hire some more people. Whoa, big deal. Like no one's gonna die,
Yeah.
you know? So yeah, man, that's what I would say to that question.
Yeah. I think, I've struggled with the same thing in the past as well. It's like, a lot of people talk about the fear of failure, right? It's like, what happens if this doesn't work? But I mean, there's also very much so the fear of success. Like what happens if this does work? Like you said, right? And I don't think a lot of people really talk about that as much. If we're talking on the cold email side, are you open to giving out some just like maybe high level of, okay, cool, cold is working for you?
Yeah.
What's your general process? Like, do you have any recommendations of if someone wants to start cold today after listening to this,
Yeah.
what could they do?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely for a B2B offer. So I would definitely say if it was someone that has a B2B specific offer, wouldn't really recommend it if you're like a fit pro. No, I wouldn't really. I mean, it might work. I don't know, but I see it working best specifically for B2B offers. A couple of different things that I'll say. Okay. The first thing you need to ask yourself is, where is my audience hanging out? Or a better question to ask yourself, because that's a really general question that gets overused all the time, is, who are the people that would already see the value from what I have to offer? So what I'm not going to give away the ultra secret sauce in terms of where we get all our leads. But what I will say, because, somebody might try to steal it or something, and I'm a guy that likes to give all the sauce away. So I'm going to give away everything but that, because that's like our proprietary method, of course. But what we do is we go to the people who already value what we have to offer. So that's a question to ask yourself. Step number one, where are the people who already value what you offer? Where are they? Once you figure that out, it might be Facebook groups. I don't know, school communities. I don't even know. Like I don't know what it would be for these people, associations, whatever. Then what I do, especially if these people are hanging out online or something like that, go on Upwork or onlinejobs.ph or something like that and hire a couple of VAs from the Philippines who specifically do research. And what I do is, my team, we will go out and craft. We have trackers, has people's first names, last names, emails, customized first lines. And that's kind of like, that's the information that we pretty much use. And then we use a platform called instantly.ai. So once we have all the leads on a sheet, we go to Instantly, which automates the entire cold email process. So we set up our domains, right? So people typically recommend 3 domains, or three domains per email address, or 3 email addresses per domain. Sorry. So if my domain is devenrodriguez.com, one would be devin@devenrodriguez.com, or devinr@devenrodriguez.com, devinrod@devenrodriguez.com. Okay. Anybody that's listening, if your business is like podcastguest.io, like mine is, you never want to use your real name as your cold email domain, because if you do, you're going to ruin your reputation as a domain, and it's just going to go to spam all the time. So I use like podcastguest.club, podcastguest.agency. So anyways, then you got to warm up your emails. I'm not going to go into that for brevity's sake. And then what we do is we have a script. Okay. The script is very simple. There's a bunch of subject lines that you can use. Like there's the old tested and simple ones, like, and you can read in Alex Berman's book, Cold Email Manifesto. It's like question. That one gets opened a lot, so you could just take that one. But then it's very simple. We put the customized first line, but that's already on the sheet. So we upload our sheet of leads, but on that sheet has a column called customized first lines. So what Instantly will do is, for each and every lead that you have updated on the sheet, it will pull the customized first line, and you insert, and it automatically inserts it into the email for you. So if I'm writing to Aaron, it would be like, hey, Aaron, saw you working with closers. Love the work that you're doing with the team, and you're organic. Now it makes you think I really did reach out to you personally, one-on-one. But in reality, all I did was upload the sheet, and Instantly automatically did that. Then I would say, so what we say is getting on podcasts one of your, or is getting on podcast on your radar for 2025? And then we go into a case study, asking because we recently got Tanner Chittister booked on 15 podcasts in 40 days that doubled his business, right? As an example. Is this something that you would want? If so, reply with a yes. Okay, bye, Devin. P.S. We've also helped people like Les Brown, Brian Tracy, Jason Wojo, Dr. Tracy Lynn, Noah Kagan. Now I'm going to stop there for a second, because most people think that that's where the money's made, but it's not. So in Instantly, we also set up our follow-ups. And like, I keep it really simple. So 2 days after the initial email, a follow-up will go out, and it will say, did you see this? With like the arrow pointing up. A couple of days later, just bumping this up in case it get buried. And we get far more calls booked on the calendar from the follow-ups than we do the initial email. So that's just like our overall process of what it looks like from a super high level, in terms of the scripting that we try to use, my methodology, my thought process around finding leads. subject lines, and then also, our follow-up game and what that looks like specifically, as well as the VAs. And they're super good. Yeah.
Is there you said it they respond yes, and then just I'm assuming anyone responds yes, you're just sending them a booking link?
Yeah, you have two options. You can either automate it. So like they have something called subsequences. So you set up a subsequence. All that a subsequence is simply an automatic reply. So if someone says the word yes, or you can set specific words or phrases like yes, I'm in. So if somebody says yes, I'm in, it'll send it. So I send it automatically if I can. And that's really good because like now that's one less team member that I got to have to manage everything. But what I will do, I have somebody that I pay on my team to specifically manage the cold email, just because there's so many emails. We're sending like 1,000 a day. So there's so many people that are responding throughout the day. So, I mean, that's something as well. So yeah, I mean, last tip I'll leave on that is you never really want to send more than 25 to 30 emails per domain. So if it's like Deven, a domain is devenrod at podcastguest.club. I'm only going to send 25 to 30 from that email. Why? Because the more you start to send from the email, the more it's more likely to get blacklisted and looked at as spam. So I have like 40 emails. So, 40 times 30, we're talking like a lot of emails that could be sent out per day. But I'll say this, I say all of that to say this. Does it work for everybody? No, it does work for me. And if you do have a B2B offer and you want to reach a lot of people fairly quickly, it's a really good and specifically very cheap. It cost me maybe $2,000 a month, maybe $2,000 a month. And, it's brought in over 100K a month at certain points. So yeah.
Dude, thank you for going in detail. Cause I think, a lot of times when someone's like, yeah, this strategy made me this, it's like, it just opens like a massive loop. So thank you for sharing that and in detail. So, dude, to kind of rounding out here, I guess what are your goals, let's say for, over the next 6 months?
Yeah. Over the next 6 months, I want to get to $8,333 per month. 830. Yeah, I said that right. $832,333 a month. There we go.
You said 8,000. So I was like, wait, hold on.
Yeah. 800.
So 833,000 a month.
$333 a month. Yes. And that's 42 customers a month, clients for us specifically. So that's my goal. That's ultimately what I want to do and where we're going to be in 6 months.
Sweet, man. Well, what we'll do is, cause like you said, it's going to be a lot different here in the next couple of months once you get, cause ads are on now, like things are moving well, fulfillment. So we'll probably let's say the third, maybe the second boardroom event, we'll do an in-person one. Cause I think, well, I'm not going to spoil where that's going to be, but yeah, so that'll be, I think, so let's see, probably June-ish time. So it gives you 6 months to get it knocked out.
All right, man. I guess we got to get to work. I guess we got to get to work.
Yes, sir. So, last couple of questions here. So what's, what would you say to someone that's listened all the way to this point and, they've worked with a lot of coaches, they've invested into a lot of sales, recruiting companies and things like that. What would you say to someone that's a little bit on the fence and it's like, hey, you should definitely work with Cole and closers?
Oh man. It's, one thing I hear in the space all the time, quite frankly, Aaron, is like, I was burned by all of these people. And I tried this thing and it didn't work. And I tried that thing and it didn't work. And honestly, when you see someone like Cole and you see his ads everywhere, the one thing you know is that he has a big ass company. Okay. Cause like the only way you see people's faces everywhere is if they spend a lot of money. So I was like, okay, like, I guess I'll check it out. And then I pulled the trigger and I joined ultimately because the person who signed me up, he like clearly linked my problem to the solution of closers, or that closers could be the solution. So anyways, I joined and man, by far, the best program I have ever invested in. And I'll tell you specifically why. Number one, the level of one-on-one support. Dude, I text my coach in Slack at like 11:30 at night. And this dude has responded at like 3:30. I'm like, John, what are you doing responding at 3:30 in the morning? He's like, hey, bro, always got to be working. So I'm like, but I know he's doing
He's probably running at that time.
Yeah, he's probably out there running or training. But like the point is he doesn't have to do those things. So when you guys say that this is a one-on-one mastermind, like that could not be any more true than it is. No, that's number one. Number two is the level of expertise on the group calls. When people hear group calls, this is what they typically think. There's going to be 100 people on the calls and I'm never going to get my question answered. Okay. I was on a group call earlier today getting my ads reviewed. There was 2 other people in there. So I got to spend as much time as I wanted on my ads with people that literally run ads for some of the biggest people in the space. Okay. So with that being said, I bring all of my sales calls to the sales trainings and you guys pick them apart. Tell me exactly what to say, what not to say, how to say it, when to say it. And that's why my close rate has been able to stay high, although I've 2.5x my prices or 3x my prices pretty much. Okay. That's the third thing. And then the fourth thing is, well, the portal, like I already talked about, like it's on steroids. I've joined other programs where they would give you some stuff in their portal, but then in order to get the rest of it, you would have to pay like another 50K for their high ticket offer, for their ascension offer. You guys gave it all for the price of STA when I first came in. I was mind blown. I didn't even know where to start. I was like, John, there's so much, but in a good way. Like I wasn't overwhelmed. I was like, holy shit, like all my questions are here. And that's what I'd really say, man. Those are some things that really stick out to me. Everybody is a seasoned expert. From you, Aaron, you host content calls. There's ads calls. There's sales training calls. There's leadership calls. There's setter calls. There's so many. Like if you want to grow a business, this is the place you have to be, period.
Dude, we literally just ended there. I mean, obviously it's much appreciated. You know, I'll say this on behalf of everyone. I think, you know, Cole has obviously built something great, and, you know, being able to, you know, have these conversations, it really kind of, for me, it even puts it in perspective of like the people that we're able to help. Because a lot of, you know, from the marketing front, I don't really see it other than, you know, our wins channel and things like that. When we put like a face to the wins and hear you say stuff like that, it jacks me up. You know what I mean? It makes me excited to go write like 5 more ads to get more people in. So,
Yeah, it's great, man.
so I guess all that being said, I'm going to do like a quick outro super quickly. And then I want you to think about, I'll give you 30 seconds. Just think about one thing that you want to leave people with from this episode. So think about that. I'm going to do this outro really quick. So I'll give you 30 seconds. So for those of you who are listening and watching this episode, obviously we're probably 45 minutes into this conversation at this point, and you're probably wondering, okay, cool. Deven's gotten some great results. I want to have a conversation with the team at Closer to see if like this is something that would actually help me as well. So we do our calls a little bit differently. We call them our implementation calls, like implementation pathway calls. And really what you do is, you know, you can click the first link down in the description, show notes in the podcast app, and basically fill out a form. And you can have a conversation with someone from our team that will just walk through your business, ask you some questions, and then help you put together a plan of like, hey, like agnostic of you working with us, this is what we would do if we were you to implement and scale to the goals that you want to get. So again, no pressure. Even though we are a sales company, we do it in a very consultative way, and we want to make sure that you know, we can help you. If we can't help you, cool. If not, totally fine as well. You can click the first link down in the description. So Deven, hopefully gave you enough time. What you got to leave the people with?
Yeah, I mean, I would say always be willing to bet on the person you can be rather than holding on onto the person who you've always been. Because for so long, you know, as an example, afraid to run these paid ads. And I was just holding on to the person that I've always been rather than stepping into the person that I could become. So I think that is what I would say, because you guys have taught me so much and I am not judging myself. But what I would say is I could have implemented these things earlier, but I didn't because I was my own worst enemy. So I would say that that's it, man. Just commit to that future version of your future self and don't hold on to that past, because there's always going to be that inner conversation that's going to talk you out of it. But the life that you want to live is on the other side of committing to that future self.
There we go, man. Well, like I said, I appreciate you jumping on and spending the time and giving some of the sauce, the cold email, and just sharing your journey overall. Like I said, I'd love to have you back on again to talk about what it's going to look like in the next 6 months. And I think it'll be really awesome to see kind of that progression. So for those of you listening, one more time, go ahead and click the link down in the description in the show notes on the podcast apps if you want to have a conversation. If not, again, all good. We have a ton of other episodes and content here on the channel for you to check out. Leave a comment down below what you thought. Leave a like if you enjoyed the episode. This has been episode number 13, I believe, of the Scaling Less Stupid podcast. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Talk soon. Peace.